So the other day my brother and I were online playing some games together, and his connection just kept dropping. So we'd be in the middle of a round and suddenly he's not there anymore, leaving me to fend for myself. So at first we thought maybe it was his internet connection, if it was Wi-Fi or what. We tried hardlining his PS4 and that wasn't bringing it back to life. So he just lives on the other side of town. I drove over to his house to see if I could help him figure out what was going on. And this is the mess that I stumbled on. His PlayStation was out in his man cave and the thing is covered in dust. This looks like the PlayStation equivalent of those dogs that you see on the ASPCA commercials. We need Sarah McLachlan to sing about this thing. In the arms of the angels, fly away from here. Every day, thousands of PlayStations live in neglect, cold, dark, and scared. Their fans filled to the brim with dust. Alright, enough of that. We don't want to get sued. So, long story short, we are going to take this puppy apart and clean every part of it. We're going to start with the case. We're going to go around the outside, get that plastic looking good. We're going to clean the intake fans where this thing pulls in the cold air. We're going to clean the fan itself, the heat sink, all of it. We're going to get this thing looking sharp. So let's give you a quick rundown of the tools that we're going to need. We've got ourselves a Swiffer duster that we're going to use to get a lot of the dust off the case, both inside and out. We've got ourselves a Top Care toothbrush. You can go with a Colgate, not a Crest. Never a Crest. Don't ask why. We're going to be using a T8 security Torx. Now this is going to be the part that's probably the hardest to find, and so in the description of this video I have a link to where you can pick up a kit that's made for disassembling PlayStations. We'll have the pieces that you need and it's at a great price. Some canned air, some alcohol wipes, paper towels, jeweler's screwdrivers, and that should be everything that we need to get started. So first thing we're going to do is take an alcohol wipe and just wipe off the top of this PlayStation here. Good Lord, that's a thick layer of dust. And you can see that even just the top of the case was coated in dust. Lots of dirt and grime coming off of there. I don't know if you could see that. We have like some sort of dust or grime in the Sony button. This puppy needs a little bit of love. I'm going to go ahead and just take it here across the front of the PlayStation. And then along the intake fans on the sides. So after we have the thick outer coating of dust off of there, let's go ahead and take our toothbrush and we are going to just run it along those intake ports there, trying to kind of pull out some of the dust that may be between the grates. Scrub those USB ports that are in the front. And then the USB, the networking, the HDMI, all those ports that we have in the back. The power port, same thing. You can see we're already much cleaner along the outside there. Sony no longer full of dog food. So now we're going to go ahead and take our canned air. And just blow this thing out on those ports. So you can see after scrubbing the outside, we look a lot better. We've got the outer plastic cleaned. These intake ports have been scrubbed and blown out. The USB ports here along the front, we've got those scrubbed and blown out using the toothbrush and the canned air. And then the ports across the back looking much better. So now let's go ahead and crack it open and we will clean the inside. Now on the Slim model, Sony's made it a little bit easier to take apart to get access to the fan, but they've also added a metal plate that we're going to have to take apart, and you'll see that as we get in there. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is across the front here, we're going to grab the edges where it says PS4 and Sony, and we're just going to pull up on those outer edges and then in the middle, and the top of the case should just release like that. And roll right off. Now actually the inside of this thing is much cleaner than I expected to see. I mean, you can see that the case there has just a little bit of dirt on it. So we're just going to go ahead and take our Swiffer, clean the inside of that case there. And then we can go ahead and just put that off to the side. On the inside here is where a little bit more of that canned air is going to come into play. Now as you spray your canned air, you don't want this fan to go around on its own too much. The fear is that you will generate an electrical current that can short out different circuits on your motherboard. So if you go ahead and just put your finger on the black piece there, as you blow it out, and then I would just go ahead with that top case off and blow out those intake ports again. Now, depending on how dirty your PlayStation is, that amount of cleaning can be sufficient. Blowing out that fan, cleaning those intake ports, that may be all that you need. I want to go ahead and go one step further, and so we're going to remove this metal plate so that we can get access to the heatsink that's in here, as well as a little bit better shot at the fan. So to do that, we're going to remove the screws that are holding in the power supply. We're going to use a miniature Phillips head screwdriver and just remove the screws that are right there. And then we've got some other screws as well. So let's go ahead and do that. And now that we have some of those screws removed, we're going to go ahead and use our T8 Torx to remove those security Torx there. You can see here that as we remove the silver plate, we've got a longer bolt on this side and a little bit shorter bolt on that side. So you can just go ahead and leave those in the holes as you set that off to the side, and that way you can keep it all straight. And now we've got our power supply somewhat out of the way. We want to take out all the screws and Torx security things that are holding this plate in place. Okay, now after we have all the screws taken out, we're just going to go ahead and pull up on that power supply just a little bit in the front. And after we have that pulled up just a little bit to give us some room, we're going to pull up here on this metal plate. As we have that, we're just going to lift it up and out of the way. Honestly, I'm pretty impressed at how clean this actually is on the inside. The fan really doesn't have too much dust in it. The underside of this protective plate has just a little bit of dust, but overall this looks really good. So let's go ahead and we're just going to take our Swiffer and wipe the inside of that plate there. And we're going to set it off to the side. And you can see here that we have the heat sink to our processor. Overall, it's a lot cleaner than I expected to see. So we're just going to take our toothbrush and kind of pull up here on the edges, try and loosen any dirt that may be there in that heatsink. Now that we've got the dust out of the way, we're going to go ahead and take our canned air again, and we can blow through the heatsink going this way, and then we can rotate it and blow it back some the other way. Now overall, the inside of that looks pretty good. If I wanted to, I could take some Q-tips and some rubbing alcohol and clean each individual blade of the fan, but I don't feel like doing that. Overall, I think that's clean enough that the airflow is going to be a lot better than it was. So let's go ahead and button this thing back up. The first thing that you're going to want to do before we put on the metal plate is there is a small metal tab that goes on the side that is opposite of where your fan is. Looks like that. It's very small and it just sets in over that screw hole and points down. You want to make sure that you don't lose that piece. So now that we've got that, we're going to go ahead and take this metal plate, slide it back in so that it lines up with those screw holes, and then the front should just set with the silver metal edge right behind that black plastic edge. Now, we're going to start with the Torx screw and put that in the back center hole. There's a small arrow that points at it. Once we've got that tightened, we don't want to over tighten, we're going to go ahead and stop. Then the black screw goes here centered over the DVD intake drive. Now finally, if you look at all your silver short screws, one of them is going to look different than all the others. I can't really show you, the camera won't focus, but it's a little bit shorter and the threads are finer. And it goes in the screw hole here. It's just a little different than the rest. Now once you have those 3 screws in place, the rest of them look to be identical, and so they can just go in the rest of the holes across the case there. And now that we have all the screws put back in on that silver plate, we're going to go ahead and press down on our power supply so that it's firm, and we're going to put this metal plate with the 2 torque screws back in. Now in case you got them mixed up, the longer torque screw goes on the side with the fan, the shorter torque screw goes on the side away from the fan. Go ahead and tighten those in. Same rules apply. We want it to be firm but not over tightened. So when you start to feel some resistance, go ahead and stop. And finally, we're going to take the 4 Phillips head screws that we have and put them in those last 4 holes. Okay, and we've got that all buttoned up on the inside. We can go ahead and take our PlayStation cover, and we're just going to start at the back and slide it forward, and you'll kind of feel it catch and some resistance. And then we're going to go ahead and just snap it on by applying pressure to the corners first and then in the middle. Once you have that lid snapped on, your PlayStation is put back together and ready to go. And you can see, oh, that's cool. The bottom of the PlayStation, the rubber feet are the different symbols that you'll find on the controller. I didn't know that. But you can see overall this thing is much cleaner than it was. We don't have dust along those air intakes. The outer cover's clean. The inside is clean. Now, the pièce de résistance, what I would do is when I boot this up, I would rebuild the database on my hard drive. It's very simple to do, and it can speed up your PlayStation quite significantly, especially if you have a lot of games, save files, things like that. It doesn't take too long. So in the description of this video, I will post a link on how to rebuild the database of your hard drive, and I would recommend doing that every few months or so. So this PlayStation is ready to go. It's going to run a lot smoother. Let me know what questions you guys have. I hope that this helps get you back in the game. Appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you next time.